Greetings and welcome to the Clonestarpodcast. I'm your host, Jody Pickens, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Sho Hurley. Good to see you, Sho.
Hey, Jody, how are you?
Good, thanks. We are thrilled to have a special guest with us today, Dr. Una McCormack, a renowned author and expert in science fiction, fantasy, and speculative fiction. Dr. McCormack has captivated readers with her deep storytelling and vast character studies. She is a New York Times and USA Today best-selling science fiction author of more than 20 novels, including original works, plus mini audio dramas and short stories. In addition to her fiction writing, Dr. McCormack's academic background in literature and creative writing brings a unique perspective to her storytelling. Well known for her TV tie-in work, she has published novels set in franchises such as Doctor Who, Firefly, and Star Trek. Whether you're a fan of her Star Trek novels or just enjoy thoughtful, compelling storytelling, you are in for a fascinating journey with her latest release, Star Trek Strange New Worlds, Asylum. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Una McCormack to the Clonestarpodcast. Good to see you.
Good to see you. It's nice not to be called veteran. People have started calling me a veteran Star Trek, which I think sounds like old.
Una, we can re-record the intro if you want and have Jody use the term veteran. No problem there.
Every line.
Speaking as a veteran author.
Yeah. I'm just going to jump right in, and the first thing I'm going to ask, well, I was lucky enough to get the hard copy of the book. Before we even talk about it or ask any questions, I just need you to tell us how we pronounce the alien species names in this book. I'm just going to get that out of the way for all the readers.
Robert Petkoff has suddenly joined the chat going, sorry, can I just listen there? That's all right.
Let's have a shout out to Robert Petkoff, who does an absolutely amazing job on this audiobook. I had to record a special little file. So they all sound perfectly reasonable in my head. They all sound great, I have to say.
Good.
The Yuxana, what's so tricky about that? Yuxana. What's so tricky about the Kionians? It all makes perfect sense in my head. And so,
it's a hard C, is it? Oh, thanks, Una. It took me I was not doing a hard C for my entire time, so the book is worthless now to me, completely worthless.
Yeah, I think you need to read it again, to be honest.
Yes. Yeah.
And read it properly this time with real attention.
As I said before, I cheated before we sat down today, and I downloaded the audiobook so I could hear the names pronounced properly. Yeah.
But I don't mind, to be honest. I think if people come up with a consistent if people come up with something, if they call them Yuxana, I don't mind. Uxana, I don't mind. If you've got something consistent in your head, and the main thing that I would want people to take is that those two languages that you see are cognates, but clearly very different. And that really is the experience that I want people to have. And I like things feeling a bit alien occasionally.
Yeah, yes.
So
that's my defense.
In terms of the names, Una, can I just check, were you watching Countdown one day and just saw the word pop up, when they were kind of do vowel and consonant, and you go, I'm going to take that name right there. That makes sense to me.
Mostly, I just feel very sad for letters like X and Z on the keyboard. I think they don't get enough time to shine.
They're getting too much dust on your keyboard.
Exactly,
better shut it in there now. So
I can't find things like the letter E anymore, and my eyesight's not as good as it was. So I thought I'm going to have to use some different keys going forwards. So everything's going to be ZXQ from here on. You just be glad I didn't put any exclamation marks in their names. There you go. That could have been much, much worse.
We didn't need that. We don't need that. It's a hard enough time.
I should probably get that file I recorded for the audiobook people and pop it on my website or something.
That's not a bad idea. You might do some people some favors. It certainly would have helped, but it's okay. We're good now. So,
good.
Yeah. Why Strange New Worlds? What made you go this direction with your Star Trek novel? writing?
Well, chiefly they asked me, which is always that's usually what happens. Is they asked me, and if I was ever going to do a book in Strange New Worlds, it would have to be about Una. So I think they kind of came and said, "What do you think about a book about Una?" And I went, "Well, I think that makes perfect sense because, as your listeners may or may not know, she is indeed named after me." So they really did. They gave her my name in the books, and then I think they raided that for the TV show. So she is Una for me. So I think they liked the idea of that. So yeah, and then I'm trying to recall what this. We were sort of. It was meant to be a book that was coming out alongside season 3, but we were hit by the writer's strike. As I think so many were, and although the obviously Hollywood shut down, publishing didn't shut down, and so we had a production cycle. So I had this lovely outline that was all tied into season 3, and then they kind of came back and said, "It's not going to avert. Yeah, you need to take that plot line and just rip it up."
just completely unravel your entire book, and it's fine. Yeah. Come back to us tomorrow with a new revised version. It's fine.
And we're sure it will be absolutely fine. And it was quite hard because there was an emotional through line that I was quite sad to say goodbye to, but we just couldn't do it. So in the end, I think we got away with it. It wasn't plot. It was kind of emotional beats. So we had to dial back on a few things and then shuffle a few things around. But I think it brought some stories into sharper focus. So the reviews have been quite nice. So that's quite a good feeling because I think if you're writing a book that isn't quite the one that you'd planned, always at the back of your mind, you're kind of going, oh, this isn't how it was meant to be, or it's not quite how it was, but hopefully it's not like that on the page.
And it's fun.
It's funny trying to get past the names. Yeah.
I was talking to someone at work today, and I was referencing what George Lucas would say about Star Wars, and he kind of said that the version of Star Wars we see is our 100%. That's what we see, but to him, it's only his 30%. But the mission he has is that he doesn't want you knowing that it's his 30%, that you have to feel it's 100%. So Una, that was your mission then, wasn't it? Because you were taking things out and you were there going, this isn't what I wanted in the finished product, but what the reader has to get is that this was the finished product.
You have to do that, yeah, and just try and put that story out of your mind completely and focus on the one that you're trying to tell. And it is quite hard because I think when you're trying to tell a story well, you get quite immersed in it. And so to have to the work really was just unpicking my own imagination and going, well, I've just got to leave that aside. That's not going to happen now. What's this story in front of me? And you just got to re-immerse yourself in that. But I think we pulled it off. Hope so.
And in terms of the story, then we don't have like this, world-ending event. This isn't about, a big blue kind of laser going into the sky or anything like that. It's a very kind of personal story. Like, is that kind of, look, obviously that's what you do when you're writing. Anyway, is that what you wanted to do with this as well? Just strip it all back, have very much a character-centric kind of book that we were going to have for Una in this situation.
Yeah, I think, like you say, it's the kind of story I like telling because I'm not very good at describing big blue things in the sky. I kind of go, there's this blue thing and it did a thing. And then I'm going, but what did the people feel about this? How did they experience it? How did this alter how they react to each other in future? So the big blue thing is not particularly of interest to me. It's how the people are interacting. I think the only huge alien thing I've really got excited about in Star Trek is the alien probe at the Star Trek 4. So that's but then it's how do people feel about it? How are the whales connecting to it? So it was always going to be a story about relationships, just because that's the kind of thing I find interesting about anything really, about Star Trek, anything I read or watch. But to pair those, to tell those stories, you obviously need something happening around them. And we are in an alien world and we can bring in some alien species and heighten the stakes in that way. So yeah, it was always going to be character based just because that's what I like doing.
Yeah, I am a big fan of that for you because what you bring to us, especially in the Star Trek world, because in the series we do get character development and character arcs, but in these novelizations, to be able to get deeper into kind of their backstories and what they feel and think as they go, I think it really connects. I think,
Good.
like I tell people when they don't understand Rafi Musket from Picard, that they need to go read Last Best Hope, because that's her her backstory is completely there, and you get to know that character so much more. And I think I enjoy that about your writing and all that you do. But I think that was especially great in this because we don't get to know Una Chin Riley that great in the series. I mean, we get an essence of who she is and how she interacts with the other characters, but this was great. So for our listeners, there's 2 time periods that we bounce between in this book. Did you enjoy writing it in that way? Like,
oh yeah, I love doing this kind of thing because it's just a really pleasing technical challenge. So my previous book, which was a Picard book called Second Self, I nearly couldn't remember it for a second then. I write so many of these things. So has this sort of nested structure where you it goes backwards in time and then up again. And people got really cross about it. So I thought, oh, I've got to do something. I was really confused what was going on. So I thought, okay, all right, well, let's try something else and let's alternate. And I the reason I like that is I just think it makes the storytelling more interesting. It gives it suspense. I think novels are all about showing the interconnections between people, between a cast of characters, and you want to show how those connections have happened across time. So when we meet people, we don't. I meet you guys now, or might meet some new people tomorrow. We join people at a specific point in their lives, yeah, and we don't get all that backstory. But in a novel, you can kind of play with that, and rearrange it and introduce that kind of stuff. And it just technically made it more interesting. I think I probably usually when I do something like that, where the time's moving around, I do write the separate sections. I usually write them all as one, so I will write them straightforward. Yeah, and then kind of take them apart. And I think I probably did that with this one as well, just because you get momentum on one story. But then you've got to sort of make it okay. Well, how the joins working, and is there a character? So there are characters that may have appeared in the earlier story that then appear in the later story, and what clues have I left so that you will pick up that this person is there, and that kind of thing. How far into spoilers can we go? Are you?
Oh, completely. Oh, geez, all of it. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So there's the young alien Hax kind of pops up again.
Oh, Hax! I got that name right, though. I do. I was able to pronounce that one. I was able to get Hax right.
if you can't say a word, honestly, it wasn't a trick. HAX wasn't a trick. There was no trick there.
It was a silent H and a silent X as well. His name was actually A.
and an invisible J.
With an exclamation point, yes.
Exactly, yeah. Up the square brackets. So, yeah. So he's obviously in the early story as a kid, as an adolescent, and then a character pops up that hopefully, if I've given you enough clues, you're kind of going, I wonder if this is such a body, and then you're kind of giving it away. So those are small things, but I think there are other ways that you can kind of have dramatic irony and just sort of play around with how you're structuring it. So it keeps me interested.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
For one thing.
That's important.
Because
we spoke to Greg Cox about Lost to Eternity because he had 3 different time periods going on, and we were asking about that, and he said he just wrote the time period straight out, and then exactly as you're saying, he looked for the kind of places to edit and all that kind of thing. Yeah. But Una, the only problem is though, Greg has you beaten because he had 3 time periods. You had 2, so there has to be 4 in your next book. Like, do you know what I mean? Like,
I did have 3 in Second Self, so I'd like to.
But people, but you, Una, you said people got confused by that. So that's we have to rule that out immediately as a result.
That's their problem. If they can't, read a word with an X in or cope with a bit of time shifting, what can I do?
Who was the inspiration for the planet that we're kind of dealing with, the races that we're dealing with, and kind of the subjugation of a culture and things like that? Was there anyone specifically that you were kind of looking at? Look, obviously, it exists quite a lot in human history in the past and the present, the whole kind of thing. Was there anyone in specific that you were kind of thinking of in this situation, or was it just more a case of, look, this has happened throughout human history, we've seen it, and as Star Trek always does with its allegories, you just took the idea of it and said, I'm going to put this in the 23rd century kind of setting?
So, like you say, I think I'm usually quite careful to not sort of do direct comparisons, because I think part of the reason for doing science fiction is that you're able to kind of distance yourself, estrange yourself from it. I think the closest, probably the thing that was on my mind, was what's happening in China with the Uyghur Muslim people there. A very similar experience, a sort of way of life that's being suppressed and penalized and so forth. So that was probably on my mind, because I sort of follow stories about that and have for some time. But like you say, I think this, you can find this anywhere, any time, going on all around us right now. And then I guess my job is to kind of find the emotional heart of that story, and not worry about real world examples, but try and build these cultures in a sympathetic way, and the people that emerge from these cultures in a way that you go, that's how that would feel, or that's what it might be like if that happened. These are choices that people might have to make. And that's why you create a sort of science fictional, fantastical culture, to be able to sort of do that. Because I can't tell that story about a real world example. I don't know enough about it, and it's not necessarily my story to tell. It'd be appropriative. But I can say, here's how I think this must feel if I imagine myself into that situation. And hopefully, if I sort of tell it in a way that isn't raising cackles because it's got, real world examples attached to it, it just lets people sort of sit about the core, be able to sort of pull back and think about the core story, the emotion, what it's like, what it must be like. And fiction's about building imaginative empathy and sympathy, or at least I think it is part of what it does. And this is one way of doing that, so that then when you go back to the real world, you kind of go, oh, well, maybe that feels like that. I hadn't considered that. That's what I hope to do through the medium of Star Trek novels. But yes, well, there was something in mind, but not in a way that I would sort of say it was directly analogous. Yeah.
I mean, that's the beauty of the sci-fi lens, right? Is, we say that a lot about Trek. Like, it's a mirror to what's happening here in our world, or what we could be moving forward. So yes, you do that well. That is going to make me ask you about the title, Asylum. So you talk about in the book, you mentioned refugees and seeking asylum. But like you said, there's this reference to like cultural appropriation that's happening, in the real world and in this novel. But I wondered about that word in the title, Asylum, and how it applied not just to the alien species going through, dealing with the cultural appropriation, but also like there's some asylum there between Una and Pike in finding each other, right? And I think the relationships across the book, there's that title applied.
Good.
You like to do that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think you need to. Your title has to kind of be refracting through your book. It's like a kaleidoscope or something. It's like the core theme of the book. So at every point when I'm stuck, I kind of go, well, what is this book actually about? Okay. Right. It's about people finding places of safety. It's about people struggling to find places of safety, or being denied places of safety, or being forced from places where they are no longer safe. So at every point, it's like your organizing principle for what you're doing. And the start of this was that episode where where Una has to sort of make her case.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, let's think through all the ramifications of that, and what she would feel if she was confronted with something similar as a younger woman, and her sort of and had to choose between being true to herself and concealing herself, which has been her central narrative for most of her life. And that's a really powerful story, I think, and can apply in lots of different situations. She's concealing some aspect of her identity, which is like a kind of passing, but it's analogous to all sorts of situations where you might not reveal some aspect of your identity. And I think that's what makes Una such a powerful character. So yeah, Asylum, you kind of give yourself a top level. Same with Second Self. The more I kind of, as I was writing that, the more I kind of went back, I would go, oh, there's another Second Self. Oh, there's another second. Never went past second. There was never a third or fourth self.
Just two. Just two.
Just two. Only ever two. Only a second self. And occasionally a first self. But yeah, you get a word like that. The moment you've got it, everything about the book makes sense. Or hopefully it should do.
Does that come to you first? Do you arrive at a word first, or do you get an outline of where you want to go with the story before the title hits?
That varies, but the title usually comes extremely early, because I don't really have a book until I have a kind of theme. So, and it's rare that it changes. Usually I hit on it and I go, right, that's what this book is about. Let's start outlining. Okay. And then, and you do this quite organically. If you make a book about, if you're calling a book Asylum, and you think, okay, well, I'm going to think about that. When you go, well, what I need is a family of refugees, people who are seeking asylum, and then then you go, okay, well, let's make it a family, and some are older, some are younger. It'd be different if they're little kids. It'd be different if they're teenagers. All these sorts of things. And then if you just start thinking logically through the ramifications of that, then your characters start to emerge. And once you've got character, you've got story. So so that's the trick.
Now,
easy as that. Just as easy as that.
Reading through this book, Una, you could have called it Star Trek Strange New Worlds Food, because there is so much food in this book, right? I actually had, my note here is so much references to food, right? That's my actual note, right? And the reason why is because I was reading something recently and it was talking about Star Trek, and it kind of said that what they did, especially, say, in the years of, say, The Next Generation, DS9, and Voyager, when anyone would eat something, read something, listen to something, it was always this highbrow stuff, like Picard reading Shakespeare, like all the kind of the food they'd eat and all this kind of stuff. But I've noticed now, I was reading your book and I was starving the whole time, because I was there going, what are they going to eat now in this second part of the book? And I'm there going, look, I got the cupboard going, I need to have a packet of crisps reading this part here, because I'm starving now reading it, right?
Where's my potatoes? Yeah.
Exactly, that's it. But every 2 minutes, Pike and Una are off going, here, let's go and have a kebab or something like that in there. Please, Una, for God's sake. I'm actually, my dinner isn't for 2 hours.
Imagine me writing it. I mean, I'm chained at the desk going, I don't get out of here until I've hit 1,200 words. Where's my chips?
But see, that's what to ask you. What was your inspiration for the different types of food?
Star Trek scoffing. That's what I'm going to call it. Right. Okay. This is very straightforward. I hadn't thought about this, but I can see why it happens. Pike shows care through food. Yeah. Pike shows care through food. I'm sorry, just remember that even one of the chapters is named after an omelette.
See what I mean? This is what I mean. Food everywhere in this book.
It's nice food, though. It's really good food. So Pike shows care through food. Yeah. So when he's not being captain, when he's got people around, he's cooking for them. It's like Cisco, isn't it? That's how he shows his shows his fatherhood to this crew. And I think he's doing that with Una to some extent. He's trying to show he cares. And he doesn't know her very well, so he's not going to cook her dinner. because that's that's a signal. So let's go and find some street food. He's trying to get us to relax, so he's not doing anything formal. But the other thing about food is that food is evocative of home, and if you're away from home and have been forced away from home, food is going to be something that reminds you of home. So they do eat, don't they? The Yuksana, where we spend time with. I probably didn't describe their food enough, actually.
Oh my God, where's the revision for that, Una? Come on, like
I know.
there was words missing from the book that had no vowels whatsoever. It was just a random section of letters.
So you do know that there's a recipe at the back of the Spock autobiography, don't you? There's a recipe for.
That's right. Yeah.
McCoy's beans. Yeah. My a friend of mine who had a Michelin star at his previous place, he put that recipe in. So it's a good recipe, guys. You want to be trying those pork and beans. It's lovely. It's really nice. So yeah, but food is about care. Food is about the experience of home, and also it's made you hungry. And also, I like food. Yeah.
Jesus, I never would have guessed, having read this book, Una, not at all.
I do like it. There's not much coffee drinking in this one. There's usually a load of coffee drinking in my books, but not in this one, I think. But that's true. I don't think I'd realised I'd put that much food in, but it's a very pint thing.
You had, yeah. You absolutely had, Una. It was I think I texted Jodie at one point about it because there was just too much going on in the book about food.
Stuffing their faces. Don't they get very grumpy about mushy peas at some point?
Yes.
Yeah, they slag off mushy peas, which this is very important that people know that these are not my opinions about mushy peas. I do not want to lose my northerner card because I'll get into a lot of trouble there. But no, this is what Americans say about mushy peas, I'm afraid. But
I will say that scene cracked me up about when they were going and they're like, well, she picked like going to the fish and chips cart. And neither one had ever tried that, and that just tickled me. That was fun.
Yeah. And their friend is like, "Why are you eating fish and chips in San Francisco? That's obviously going to be dreadful. You can't get decent fish. You're insane. You can't even get decent fish and chips in the south of England. Never mind America." So I have quite strong opinions.
Jeez, I never would have thought, Una. Good Lord.
But my top level justification of food is about love and care and identity and home. Those are the thematic reasons.
Jodie, I think I think we predicted that Una's next book will have no storyline. It's just going to be Pike going around visiting different places all over the world and eating their fast food and things like that.
I think that would be incredible. And you know he would know it, don't you? You know that Pike would land anywhere and he'd have sorted out in his head. I've got a friend who's exactly like this. I've got a friend and we meet at conferences in various European cities, and he'll get there usually a day before me, and I'll arrive and he'll go, right, here are the 3 places. I trust you. I've never had a bad meal with you. Let's try that one. We'll try that one. So, and he'll check them out beforehand and that kind of thing. And there's just people like that. They've just got really good. My other half's like that as well. He'll kind of go, you're going to be in Prague. Here are the 3 restaurants you need to go to. There you go. Fantastic. I'll just go and eat the lovely food.
But you're right. There are people out there. They're foodies and they try to find like the unique, off the beaten path place. Yeah. And Pike is that person. It didn't even faze me that he would know or have already scoped out, all these places.
And sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes you take a chance on a bar and you go into the bar and you go, this is a terrible bar. Just leave this bar and never speak of it again. And sometimes he just gets it exactly right. So, but he tries it, and that's I'm glad I made you hungry.
There you go now.
Warning: this book may make you a stone heavier.
Go to the store before you read.
Yeah, exactly.
You're gonna need it. Oh, I have to ask about writing characters and that are already present in a series, an ongoing series, how much do the actors playing those characters influence what you're telling in your books?
Oh, well, not so much the actors as the performances, but that's absolutely crucial. Because a book like this, people want to hear the characters' voices. Yeah, if you're writing a Strange New World book, people want to hear Pike and Una and a bit of Spock and a bit of whatever. I can remember it still sticks in my mind. It was one of my very early books, and it had Miles O'Brien in it. And there was a review somewhere that said, "Oh, I was enjoying this book, and then Miles appeared, and it was so wrong that I burst into tears." And oh my God, literally, I have one job, which is to get these characters right, and I have made you so sad, and you've spent $6 or whatever. So it's absolutely crucial, I think, that you get these guys right. And you just have to listen to the voices, and so obviously I watch back quite a bit. I probably don't with some characters. I do watch other stuff that the actors are in, but I don't do that with Strange New Worlds, I think, because they're so distinctive. You wouldn't do it with Firefly, for example. You just want to capture those voices.
Yeah.
So you just want to get those speech patterns right, I think, and that just means listening to and watching the show. And I'm lucky. I happen to have quite a good ear for this kind of thing. I'm quite good on it. I can't describe anything to save my life. The big blue thing arrived in the sky. How did we feel? But I am quite good at character voices. So and that's just lucky. So I enjoy doing that.
It comes across in your writing. There's a particular scene in this book where Ortegas and Spock and Uhura are sitting down and talking about this, trying to figure out this alien language and decipher that. And I mean, I read that and I could just hear the actors' voices in my head, like it just totally translated. And I do think you do that so well in your books. But it's fun to hear that I
hear the voices. That's one of my favorite scenes in the book, and that's
great.
I'm learning Irish at the moment. We were talking about just before we started recording, and that's a scene which is kind of directly related to me studying Irish. Going,
oh, nice.
These verbs. What does this mean? And what does this mean for the mindset of the? So they don't have a passive tense in the way we would be used to. So and I love that scene. It's always nice to get a bit of Spock in, I think. People go, where's Spock?
Oh, yes.
Not include Spock. But they were a joy to write. They've just got such crystal clear voices. I could have kept on. That scene I could have kept on for pages, but ultimately
and the pacing of it, like you could just tell like the pacing of the way they're speaking to each other, and you get that with all the characters. You get that with Pike and Una, and I think that comes across really great. And I think that's it's a unique talent. So thank you for writing that way. It's amazing.
Oh, that's lovely.
Question for you then as well. We have just finished watching the Apple TV show Disclaimer. I don't know if you've seen it yet.
No, I don't have Apple. Apple is it's the one streaming I don't have, or what one of many. But no, but tell me about it. Go on.
I can't ruin it.
Okay, all right.
I can say this in such a way that it doesn't ruin it, and which is the important part, right? But in that, there's a lot about getting one side of the story rather than both. And in this book, there's a good bit of that as well. You don't get the full side of the story. What happens is people are making a kind of assumptions in that kind of thing as a result of that. Was that an intentional choice that in certain situations people have to try and hold back in the hope that I can get over this? People don't need to know about everything. But what happens is people make decisions based on kind of not fully understanding what the other side is going through.
Right. Okay. So we're talking about a scene. Are we talking about a scene in the sort of Enterprise sections where they're making assumptions about one of the diplomatic group?
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
I think. Yeah. So I think they're assumptions are being made about him, which are at the end of the day racist by the people around him. Or prejudiced at the very least, and it people are so they are making mistakes about him, and then on Enterprise, really, they don't have enough information. All the information that they're getting is from this prejudiced source, and they're going, well, we don't feel very comfortable with this. How do we find out more? Yeah, I mean, partly the story is kind of a detective story, isn't it? You've got there has been a crime. I have set up a small cast of characters. I think I've only got about 3 suspects, so there's only so much sleight of hand I can do. So each of them must seem convincing at some point, or re-convincing once you've sort of discounted them.
Actually, something you said there, Una, as well, and I have to pick you up on this because this drove me bonkers during the entire book. Right?
Go on.
Is it Enterprise or is it the Enterprise? Because you switched and you chopped and you changed quite a lot.
Did I?
And the funny thing is, if you remember in the early seasons of Voyager, I remember Tom Paris, I think it's in State of Flux or is it Parallax, one or the other, where he sees Voyager on the view screen. He says, oh, look, it's the Voyager. And you're going, buddy, no, the word, the Z does not belong there at all. No.
I would have to look at how I was using it because
I love it. I love the fact that it switched and changed. You'd sometimes say Enterprise, and then other times you'd say on the Enterprise, and I'm kind of there going, "This is cool."
I'd be really interested to see whether people say it in speech. Which, if there's a consistency, whether people say, "Oh, we're going back on board Enterprise," or whereas if you're in narration, then I would probably say something like, the Enterprise arrived at docking. Yeah, so it might be something like that. I'm absolutely kind of covering my arse there.
I never would have thought you were doing that, Una, at all in that situation.
I think you would need to speak to the copy editor. Well, that's
not on her.
The lowest, isn't it?
Because the funny thing is, right, the very first time I ever remember hearing someone refer to it as not as the Enterprise, but as Enterprise. And Jody, you wouldn't know this one, is that me and Una would. So back in the early 90s, BBC Two would show Star Trek the Animated Series at 10:30 in the day. I didn't know the animated series ever existed, but I remember taping it one day when I was in school, and it came back and it said, coming up now, it says Animated Adventures with Captain Kirk and the crew of Enterprise. And I said, oh wow, he didn't put in the word the. And it sounds so much cooler as a result. So ever since, it's always stuck in my head when anyone says, is it the Enterprise or Enterprise?
This sounds to me like something you need to let go.
No, it's absolutely not under any circumstances. Rooting through all the Star Trek books over the years and underlining it. What did they say here about Enterprise?
It's like me getting angry when people say, I was sat watching television. No, you weren't. You were sitting. You were sitting, for God's sake. And it's lost, and that battle is over. And
it's gone. You've lost that one, Una. Yeah,
I know, but I will stand on a rock in the ocean flying that flag. I don't care. It's got to have standards, damn it. A line has to be drawn.
That's fantastic. Let it go, show. Let it
go. No circumstance, Jody. I hold on to these things for quite a while.
As Elsa tells us, let it go.
Channel your inner Elsa. It'll be okay. We talked about characters and getting their voices. So tell me about writing Pelia as.
Oh,
come on. That's just such a fun character, period. But to have her at the Academy and talk to me about channeling her.
Well, God, that was just fun. And honestly, have you heard Robert Petkoff? It's absolutely amazing. It's just because I got the audiobook the other day and I'm just going to skip ahead and see what he's done with Pelia because, oh my God, he's absolutely got this. No, I mean, again, that is something that you have to sort of rein yourself in a way. You're kind of going, I could write this for pages, but I think people would probably want some plot or maybe some more food. I don't know.
Or references to Federation starships without the word "the" at the start.
Exactly,
There's always that as well. You know what I mean?
Only in some minds. But yeah, I mean, it's great. It's just a really fun voice. And I think the thing with Pelia is you could sort of run a long way with, well, what exactly did she experience of human history throughout her time here? Let me put her in the fall of Rome, or but then, as I think I say in the book, it doesn't really matter whether she was or not. It's the impression that she wants to leave you in. So again, just a voice that once you hit it, or you feel like you've started channeling it, you could just write it and write it and write it. The last, I mean, Garrick, obviously this happens with, but I think the last time I had this much fun was obviously, and Pulaski, Book and Burnham just have this kind of, the way they wisecrack at each other. I was having to stop myself. All right, I've got to like 3 pages now, but they're meant to be doing a heist.
Yeah.
So let me pare that back and then just put in some things where they throw some punches and have some run a bit. Some characters are just like that. They just deliver. And she's great fun. Just so much fun.
There's a conversation between Pike and Pelia in the book towards the end when Pike is talking about the importance of failing and that things are not easy and things like that. I'm kind of reminded of the end of Q Who, when the Enterprise has had its saucer section ripped open by the Borg, and you think it's all going to be fixed, and effectively Q says, like, you know, if you're going to run home every time you got a bloody nose, like, what are you doing out in space, and kind of that kind of thing. And when we were kind of talking about this, sometimes we look at Starfleet as like, oh, it's this easy ride, you go out into space and all that kind of thing, but like it's not. Like, you're being trained to an exceptionally high level because you were taking on certain responsibilities and, say, actions you're going to do and things you're going to experience, which are far beyond anything that the academy can teaches you in that kind of situation. Like, and like when you're writing this, because like you didn't need to put this in to the book, like, but it adds so much to the character of Pike that he's kind of there going, like, effectively, like, I've seen things, man, and like we need to bring this back here to the academy as well. Like, how important was it to put that in for him to be the one to kind of say that, like, sometimes we do need a bloody nose before we can go out there?
Well, I think particularly a character like Pike, there's a couple of things going on here, I think. First of all, I think, remember, this should feel a little bit more of a Federation that's a little bit rough at the edges. It shouldn't feel like that very glossy TNG, you know, where it feels like we've, you know, everything, the edges have all been smoothed off. It's just a little rougher, and the frontier's just a little bit wilder, and they are taking risks. We can, you know, you go back to the original series, there are colonies that are, you know, starving, and all sorts of bits of stuff. You know, everything feels a little bit edgier. So it should feel a bit like that. And I think Pike would feel it would be important for people to learn that. But also, I think it's sort of, Pike's such a melancholy figure in a way, because he knows where his own story is going to end. There comes a point in Pike's life where he knows he's on borrowed time, and it's how he's living with that, and that sense of his own, not failure, but his own demise, that his future isn't limitless. And that seems that's one of the most interesting things about Pike to me, and about Strange New Worlds, actually, is that sort of, that little edge of melancholy underneath a show that should be about the Federation at its most energetic and exciting and exploratory. You've sort of got this story of loss, and his death, his mortality. So that felt quite an important story to me as well. I think all these, I taught for a long time at a university, at kind of a well-known, globally famous, high-ranking university in the English city of Cambridge, and I taught a lot of people who are superbly, you know, really smart, really gifted, you know, sickeningly talented young people, and often they didn't cope, or you know, not all of them, but some of them didn't cope with that first experience of failure. It was something that, or that fear of that happening, of not consistently being excellent, was something that you know, preyed on their minds quite a lot. So that I thought would be something convincing for Academy students to feel or lack, because they've always been, I'm going to get into the Academy, I've got to be the best, I've got to be the best, always got to be high achieving and all these sorts of things. And then once I started thinking about that, it immediately connected up in my mind to the Kobayashi Maru. And then I thought, hang on a minute, I think I've got a little story here. So I emailed Dayton Ward and Dave Mack, and I said, has this ever been covered? The kind of who invented the Kobayashi Maru? And there was a pause. And they went, no, it hasn't. Excellent. Let's do that. Yeah. So again, it was one of those things where you find a sub-theme and you go, well, I think this through to the logical conclusion. Then I get quite a nifty little secondary plot out of this. So that was very pleasing. If they come back and said, oh yeah, that's in like Marshak and Cub breeds something of the Phoenix, I'd have been damn it. Well, we're doing it again, guys.
New and
But that
improved.
was lovely. Yeah, I was really pleased when I realized we could go with that. That was really good fun. So yes, that's something I sort of was consciously writing in. Yeah.
This is it, speaking of that, like you're bringing in the Kobayashi Maru, and I mean, there's Trek lore peppered throughout the story. Yeah. How much research do you have to do into Trek to so seamlessly integrate that into the storyline?
So there's a fair bit in my head. Just that, there just is. This I'm not so strong on. I'm much more a Cardassian expert, it has to be said. but if in doubt, what I do is I email Dayton Ward and I say help. And there is nothing that man does not know about Star Trek. It is absolutely amazing. So all that Ares 4 stuff, I was bouncing a couple of ideas. It was when we were kind of coming up with this Kobayashi Maru plotline, and I was saying what I imagine is this kind of thing that Pelia has set up, this kind of real world immersive experience of disasters, and how they would cope with it, and so we're bouncing that around. I said, I'm thinking Apollo 13, that kind of thing, and he said, oh well, how about this one from I can't remember which it's in now. It's in Enterprise. And I mean, it was so deep a cut that Dave Mack, who was in on the thread, was going, Dayton, we kind of bow to you as our God King. It really was. So that I would never have come up with that, because I've watched it all, but it's years since I've watched Enterprise. I don't willingly go back and rewatch Enterprise that often. But that's one fair. That Dayton kind of goes, well, why not put this one in? People who recognise it will absolutely love it. And it was a great one to pick as well. I was safer on the Mikado than I was with Enterprise.
You gotta love the Gilbert and Sullivan, though. Come on,
I couldn't not include that. That was an absolute gift. Putting that into that short trek was just I had to run with that. My kid got a bit obsessed with Gilbert and Sullivan last year as well, so it all
lined up.
Nicely. It all lined up perfectly.
There's a line towards the end of the book actually that I love, that I wrote down. I slightly paraphrased it, and it's Una's thinking to herself, I do not always have to be the star, sometimes I can be the supporting act. And I love that, because at times in Star Trek, it's not just all about the captain, is it? Really, like you even look at, say, like Commander Riker in The Next Generation, always number one, never the captain, but always such an integral part to kind of what he does and things like that. And like, what did you want to kind of come across with Una having that realization that she's such a wonderful, say, dedicated person, she's doing so well at the Academy, but for her to come to the realization, I don't have to be like the big cheese. There's other parts that I can actually do, and I can feel just as fulfilled by doing that.
Exactly that. And the pursuit of it is for reasons to do with sometimes it's to do with reasons of what she's concealing, rather than what she needs to excel. And she's number one. Yeah. She's not the captain. She's number one. Yeah. She would get best supporting actress, at the Oscars, which isn't a lesser Oscar in any way. It's a specific function within a film, and I don't think she would enjoy being a captain, because, like she says in the book, she's the one who knows the regs. It's somebody who will take that risk in the moment, someone like a Pike, or all sorts of other characters in Star Trek, but she's there as the kind of, okay, well, this risk is too much of a risk, or you need to do this, or you've missed that, you've forgotten that. And I think it's liberating for her and at the same time, though, she is excellent. She's the poster girl. She's all these sorts of things. It's very nice to write a book where, on every other page, people are going, Una, you're marvelous. Una, you're wonderful. Warmly recommend it.
Good for your self-esteem, right?
Yeah. Exactly. I am marvelous, actually. Thank you. What a nice day I've had in the office.
Best book ever.
Yeah, exactly.
I have to go back to Pelia for just a second, because as I read this book, it kind of struck me that I think I look at Pelia now and I feel like she's like an eccentric Guinan.
Oh yeah, that's quite a good take. Yeah. I can see that.
Because we don't know really how much time she's been around or what she's experienced or what timelines, and she seems to have a handle on everybody around her, like has their number pretty quick, and in her own way guides people in certain directions. And it really just kind of struck me that there's some similarities or parallels, at least.
There are, yes, and that in Guinan in my mind always connects up to Q. So that's that sort of figure. It's a little bit of a Greek chorus, isn't it? Somebody with more of an omniscient view. In my head, Guinan is from Gallifrey. She's a time lady. So that probably explains a bit Pelia as well. Neither of them have regenerated yet, but yeah, that's great. I really like that. I hadn't consciously connected that. I'm pleased with that. I'm gonna have to think about that.
You can put that in your group chat with the guys.
Una, I have to ask you as well about the non-date between Pike and Una as well. It kind of reminded me a bit of the 1990s, where everything was will they or won't they with absolutely almost every show. I was thinking of Mulder and Scully as I was kind of reading that. I started out and I didn't feel anything romantic in there at all. And then when you kind of brought it up, I was there going, I wonder, I was there in my head going, did it need to be brought up? Because it kind of felt like a kind of a platonic thing all the way along. When you were writing it, did you say, I better just clarify, this is not either of them trying to be kind of looking for more than what it actually is, that this is just a man and a woman who can actually be friends?
So I think that Pike would have been happy to pursue a relationship if Una had been up for it, and so he kind of offers, and she says no, and he goes, that's fine, absolutely fine, let's move on from that then. So I think he would have been happy at that point. He would have happily done that. She's not interested, so that's off the cards. So then they progress to friendship, and I quite liked doing that. First of all, I like having a story about a man and a woman who are friends and colleagues. Yeah, that's nice. And second, I like the idea that a guy says, I'd really like to date you. And she goes, I'm not interested in that. Thank you very much. And he says, that's fine. And then they carry on, and he kind of respects. Yeah. So, he thinks she's great. He thinks she's fantastic. He thinks she's gorgeous. He'd love to explore this further if she is interested in that. She's not. That's where it ends. And then they get to have this.
It was handled in a very mature way as well in the book, in terms, as you said, like it's very much kind of like just because there's nothing romantic on here doesn't mean we can't still connect as people and actually be friends.
Yeah, exactly that. And we probably don't see that enough, do we? Between men and women. Just liking each other and getting on with each other. Yeah, that's a kind of thing a way we can relate, you know. And they do that. They do that for their whole careers. They establish that ground. And then he goes, do you know what? I think I think he has a line, doesn't he? I want to work out how it is that I get to keep this person in my life.
Yeah.
Because this person's amazing, palpably.
Mm-hmm.
And she becomes his number one. She's Pike's number one. So yeah. I also like the line where she's kind of going, yeah, I do want this sort of relationship. I don't know if there's a word for it. And he's kind of begins with an F, and then it has an R and an I, and oh yeah, that one, friendship. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that one, Una. Yeah, so yeah, they're very sweet together, I think. At the same time, I can absolutely see that you could write that relationship as a romance, but it didn't seem as interesting, I think. Yeah.
To be honest with you, that was, when I finished the book and I kind of stepped back from it, I was like, I'm not sure I've read a lot of books where that's happened, where two of the main characters, they talk about, are you interested in having a romantic or pursuing a romantic option? And the female character can express, no, I'm just not there. And it's respected. And I think that's a powerful,
well, I'm glad about that. I think Lois Bujold does it in a couple of her books. I don't know if you read Lois McMaster Bujold. Mm-hmm. She's got a couple of places where the lead, it's called the Volkozigen Saga, the space opera, the absolute joy. She was a Star Trek fan. If you love space opera relationships, food, and frogs. You'll enjoy them. So and Miles, the lead, falls in love all the time with a series of ladies who say, that's very kind of you, Miles, but no thank you. And then he's kind of lovelorn, but he has a working relationship. One of them is on his crew and gets married and has kids, and they work together. So I've seen it in Bujold. I wondered if I was channeling a little bit of that. But yeah, it's nice to see, isn't it? I think
it is. Yeah. It really is, and I think it will speak to not only just fans of these characters, but I think a lot of female fans will appreciate the statement there. So
good.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
I do have to ask also, what do you hope readers take from this story?
Oh goodness!
We asked the hard questions here, Una. Like, you're not coming here for an easy ride.
Well, I just don't want them to hate it.
Very low bar there, Una.
That's all that anyone tells you anything else, they're telling you a fib. All writers want is for you not to hate it.
So
no one's going to hate it.
The book awards, Una, you go to every year, the Quiet Book Awards. Nobody knows it's the least hated book in the year award goes to.
We only loathed it a little bit. You just, for all you want is for how long does it take Robert Petkoff to read it? About 8 hours. For the 8 hours that you are listening to the letter X. This book is brought to you by the letter X and the number 1.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Jodie, I think a new episode we're going to have, right, is going to have Robert Petkoff on, right? We're going to flash up names on the screen that
just have him.
And Greg and David and Dayton have written for him and say, pronounce these words, Robert.
Can I just say how beautifully he reads it? Because there are two people that he gives British accents to. And his British accents, his English accents are flawless. And most of all, not that I specially listen to this, the name Una, he says it right when it's in an American accent, and he gets it perfect when it's in an English British accent. So it is different. And when you hear him say it, it's just great. It's really good. No, I say, what do I want people to take it? Genuinely, I want people to enjoy it. I want people to feel like they were on the Enterprise, for a...
You could have said on Enterprise, it would have worked just as well, Una. Just throwing it out there.
That they were on Enterprise. You could edit that in and out. It makes perfect sense. It felt like they were having an episode of Strange New Worlds, that these glimpses we got into the past feel consistent. that the aliens felt interesting and unusual, and that the sort of the experiences that they had felt like they raised some questions in the mind. But mostly, you want people to enjoy it. You want people to like it. I would say you just want them to be beguiled for the period of time that they're reading it. And just don't hate it.
It really has everything. If you're a fan of Strange New Worlds, you get the characters, you get the wonderful storylines. It connects to the series so beautifully, and there's food and complicated alien names and time, going back and forth along 2 time periods. I think people are going to love it. I really do, and I think it's a great
production of the Mikado. There's a production of the Mikado.
Right.
It's barely even mentioned Gilbert and Sullivan, which I think is the unique selling point.
Jody,
it's got Gilbert and Sullivan and Holodeck, and it's got it all.
When this interview is over, I'm going to get onto the publicist and leave our professional review of the book. So when they publish it in paperback in your scum, it'll say at the bottom, "We didn't hate it, Clonestar Podcast."
Yes.
That's the review you need on your book.
5 stars. We didn't hate it.
We didn't hate it.
We didn't hate it.
Didn't necessarily love it, but didn't hate it. So there's there's a middle ground there.
It was okay.
Oh, I love it. That's great.
Passed the time, didn't it? Between birth and death,
Oh, that's good. Oh, well, Sho, did you have any additional questions?
No, it's raised more questions than it's given me answers. Being answered to Jody, that's Enterprise or the Enterprise, like what kind of
That's all he
food,
keeps-
like how to pronounce words with proper
very
Petkoff.
troubled about this,
He
I
really
think
is.
Yeah, got to relax on this one.
Now that I know, I'm going to type it 6 different ways in all of our text messages, so it'll be. I'm on it. I got it.
L'entreprise, there are many.
Oh, I love it.
Enterprise.
She's going to come at you with all of them now, so you're in trouble. You're in trouble.
That's we've hit my limit now.
Una, I'm just going to ask you one more question. And what's up next for you? What's in the horizon there?
So what can I tell you?
What legally are you allowed to tell us? But poor Greg Cox wasn't legally allowed to tell us anything either.
Well, there are many things I can't tell you. The one thing I can tell you that's just been announced is that I just did a play with Big Finish, who do the Doctor Who audios. Oh, wow. And they've just I do lots of audios for them, but they've just announced a box set with Sacha Darwin, who played the Master with Jodie Whittaker's Doctor. So and I've done one of those plays. So that's coming quite soon. So that was announced just the other day. So I think that's the only thing I can tell you about right now.
Interesting.
So you're not going to tell us there's a 7 novel, right? You're not going to say anything about you writing a 7 of 9 novel.
A 7 of 9 novel? I would not. No, no.
Would you write one? Because I know
one. Oh, there's been one, hasn't there?
Yes, there has, but there's never enough.
Oh God, yeah. Well, obviously. I mean, 7 and Raffi. I'd do like a shots. That would be amazing. Yeah,
okay,
they want to. Yeah,
that's all we need to know.
I love writing Raffi. I could easily do another Raffi book. I think it's one of my favourite things about Picard.
Yeah,
some more Adventures of Raffi and Worf. I could easily do. I think I'd quite happily do that. Maybe Raffi opens a restaurant.
Oh yeah.
No, I swear to God, if your next book comes out and there's references to food, I'm not reading it, right?
Star Trek cooking.
Star Trek cooking.
There was a Neelix cookbook. We all remember that Neelix had a cookbook many years ago. Don't forget poor Neelix and his cookbook.
Can't have been good.
Oh, well, that's exciting about the Doctor Who stuff that you've got on the horizon, and we'll look forward to the stuff you can't tell us about.
Yeah, and then eventually I'll come and talk to you about it. But that was
great. We'll have you back anytime.
My pleasure.
Anytime.
That'd be lovely.
Thank you. Well, Dr. McCormack, thank you so much for your time today. For all of our listeners and those watching Star Trek Strange New Worlds, Asylum novel is available now in hard copy and in digital and audiobook. Go check the audiobook out. It's fantastic. As always, we appreciate your continued support. Please make sure you subscribe to the Clonestar podcast wherever you listen and to our YouTube channel. And you can also stay up to date with all the great things happening with Clonestar Podcast by visiting us at clonestarpod.com. Thank you again for joining us, and until next time, go boldly, live long and prosper.